Today, we're diving into a fundamental skill that every single pilot has to master. But get it wrong, and a totally routine flight can turn into an absolute disaster in a heartbeat. It's called coordinated flight. And honestly, understanding it is the difference between a graceful, safe turn and a catastrophic, unrecoverable spin.
So how does that even happen, right? How can a simple, everyday turn while you're getting ready to land just spiral, literally, into a pilot's worst nightmare? Well, it all boils down to one very common and very human mistake. You know, that mistake loves to rear its ugly head during one specific, really high-pressure moment, that final turn from what's called the base leg to the final approach. So let's break down this deadly turn. Okay, put yourself in the cockpit. You're making that last turn to line up with the runway, but you've gone a little too far. You've overshot the center line. The runway is right there. The pressure is on, so what do?
Your gut instinct, your gut reaction, is to just yank the plane back on course, right? Well, the fatal reaction is to stomp on the inside rudder pedal to try and force the plane's nose around, trying to cheat the turn without banking the wings enough. And that is a massive mistake. It throws the aircraft into a really dangerous, uncoordinated state we call a skid. So, if jamming on the rudder is a huge no-no, then what's the right way to do it? Well, it all comes down to mastering the art of coordination. To put it simply, coordinated flight just means the airplane is flying cleanly through the air, even when it's turning. The nose is pointed exactly where the plane is going. This keeps drag to a minimum, makes the flight super efficient, and, this is the most important part, it prevents the very conditions that lead to a spin.
So how does a pilot stay in that perfect aerodynamic balance? It really all comes down to a super simple mantra that gets drilled into every student pilot from their very first flight. Step on the ball. And what is the ball? It's not some complex computer, it's part of an incredibly simple instrument. Basically just a black ball floating inside a curved glass tube. That's it. When all the forces in the turn are balanced, gravity keeps the ball right in the center. But the second the turn gets sloppy, the ball slides to one side, giving the pilot an instant, unmistakable signal that they're uncoordinated. And the rule for fixing it is just beautifully simple. If the ball slides to the left, you step on the left rudder pedal. If it slides to the right, you step on the right rudder pedal. You literally step on the ball with your feet to nudge it back into the center. Doing that realigns the aircraft with the wind, making the turn clean, efficient, and most importantly, safe. So when that ball isn't perfectly centered, the plane is uncoordinated. And that uncoordinated state can be one of two things, a slip or a skid. They might sound kind of similar, but believe me, when it comes to safety, these two are worlds apart. Here's the simple breakdown. In a slip, the ball moves to the inside of your turn. That means you've banked the wings too much for how fast you're actually turning. But in a skid, the ball moves to the outside of the turn, and that's the danger zone. That means you're using too much rudder for your bank angle. Let's look at the slip first, because it's the much less dangerous of the two. In a slip, you've got too much bank. But the really key safety feature here is what happens if the plane stalls. The higher outside wing is the one that tends to stall first, and when it does, the plane naturally wants to roll away from the turn, helping to level itself out. It's a much more stable way to fail, if that makes sense. Now, the skid. This is the killer we talked about at the beginning. This is when there's too much rudder for the bank. Because of how it's flying through the air, the inside lower wing is hitting the wind at a much steeper angle. Pilots call this a higher angle of attack. And when you're flying low and slow, like on final approach, this is the absolute perfect recipe for a stall that turns into a spin.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty of the aerodynamics. Why exactly is a skidding turn so incredibly hazardous?
This really gets to the heart of the whole thing. A stall is just when the wings stop creating lift. But why, in a skid, does that stall almost instantly turn into an uncontrollable spin? Is this absolutely deadly chain reaction. First, too much rudder starts the skid. Then the outside wing is moving faster, so it generates more lift, which makes the plane want to bank even more. The pilot's instinct is to use the ailerons to fight that overbanking and level the wings. But here's the trap. That very action dramatically increases the angle of attack on the already slow-moving inside wing. That wing stalls, it drops like a rock, and because the plane is already yawing, you're in a spin. And at low altitude, there's just no time to recover. And, as if that all wasn't bad enough, in a skid, the airplane's own body starts working against it. The fuselage can actually block or blanket the airflow over the inside wing. This disrupts the smooth air that wing needs to create lift, and it just makes that wing stall even earlier and more aggressively. So, after all that technical stuff, What's the one thing, the single most important lesson to remember from all of this? Well, it all comes down to one simple golden rule.
And here it is. This whole idea of coordinated flight, it's not about being a neat and tidy pilot, and it's not just about giving your passengers a smooth ride. Keeping that little ball in the center is a fundamental, absolutely non-negotiable rule for staying alive.
This is the ultimate takeaway. If you overshoot that final turn, don't you dare try to cheat your way back with the rudder. The risk is just way too high. The only safe, the only professional response is to execute a go-around. You add power, climb away safely, and you come back around to try the approach again. There is absolutely no shame in going around. It is always the right call.
In the end, what coordinated flight really teaches us is a profound lesson. Flying smoothly isn't just about being elegant, it's about survival. It shows us that in aviation, the smoothest path isn't just the most comfortable one, it's very often the only safe one.